Awesome. All right, it looks like we are live.
Perfect.
Awesome. Welcome everybody to the Lab Coat Agents webinar for the day. Today we have Brad Kriger. Brad, tell me a little bit about you and what you do.
Yes, I'm Brad Kriger. Just real brief, I was a real estate agent in the DC, Northern Virginia market back in 2015 to about 2020. I ran a big team there. I think we had about 12 agents. Our last year we did about 80 million in sales. I relocated to North Carolina, where I'm from. Obviously the price point shifted, from my average of about 800-900 to, 300-400. And I'd been wanting to get into investing. And I'd done a couple of deals in the Northern Virginia area and been a part of a lot of renovations through a company called Curbio. And so from there, I found my first house just through calling data in Mojo. I flipped it, and I think I paid 110 for that house. I put about 50 in it and sold it for 260. So you take out, closing cost and, et cetera. I ended up clearing around like 75K on that flip. And then from there I got into doing, I was still doing flips, and then I got into using the BRRRR strategy. So that's buy, rehab, refinance, and rent. So I was able to pull most of my cash out, because you can pull out about 75-80% of the appraised value. And then I turned those into Airbnbs in Winston, and got up to around a portfolio of about 24 properties. And then interest rates changed. In the last couple of years, I primarily, other than a couple of rentals I've held on to, just some really good ones, I primarily have been flipping. And so that's what I do for a living, do for revenue. I also have a remodeling business. So I do retail remodels. The way that we're set up is like, I don't hold a real estate license any longer. And my brother is a licensed real estate agent, and we own our brokerage 50-50 together. And so I do all the flips, and he does all the retail sales and sells my flips as well. So that's kind of the general rundown. I do about last year, 2024, I turned over 34 properties. Just a mixture of, I think I wholesaled 2 of them. I really don't wholesale a lot. It's really just not something that, really not a part of my business model. It just kind of, these houses were further, like an hour and a half away from where I live. It was hard. It was going to be hard to get contracting crews. And, I do what's, the wholetailing model is kind of, I would say that between that and flipping is kind of what I do. So, I'll buy it, or I'll go under contract on the property. I'm in North Carolina. So in North Carolina, you're able to list contracts on MLS. So, or you're able to list without owning the property. So usually what I do if the house is in good enough shape is I go under contract, I list the house on the open market, and then I go ahead and close on it. And then, I've already got a buyer secured. So I only own the home for, usually on average, in that situation, 2-3 weeks.
All right. So if I could interrupt right there, because I have questions about that.
Yeah.
So
Holler at me.
So that's effectively a wholesale then, correct?
Yeah. I mean, it is, but I'm not selling the contract. I actually sell the property. So it's kind of the same, I guess you would say, premise where you're trying to, you're buying, at a discounted price. And then, so like on average, if I go ahead and flip the house, I own it for 3 to 6 months. I usually use hard money when I purchase. About 1 out of every 3 that I purchase, I use other people's money. And so, I go ahead and close on the property, and then, they get through their inspection periods and everything else. And then they go ahead and close on it. So it's kind of like an A to B to C transaction instead of an A to B transaction.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'll ask the attendees, those of you who are here in the chat, give us an idea kind of what your experience level is. If we need to go like really super like nuts and bolts, if we want to talk about higher level strategies, it sounds like we can do both here. So just would love to hear from the chat about where you're from, what market you're in, and kind of your experience level. Just so we know how to tailor the talk for exactly what you're looking for. So one of the questions I have when you're talking about listing a contract, 'cause I'm really interested in that because I don't we can't do that in California. So
Okay.
when you list a contract like that, you found a seller that generally wants to move quick, and their highest priority is not necessarily top dollar. They need quick cash, right?
Right. Usually, yes. And so, the way I explain it to sellers is, I can give you a direct cash offer. I purchased the home from you, you know, in the traditional sense. And then I give them another option, which is as I just call it, kind of the flexible cash offer, where I'll go ahead and guarantee to close on the property, but allow me to market the property before I close so that it'll shorten my timeline. And I usually give them like a $5,000 incentive to do that.
Right. And if because
Somewhere,
effectively you're
it's all
taking on all the
negotiable,
risk.
but it's usually, and a lot of times once I go under contract on the property, I will go back to them and, I'll go back to them after I go under contract and say, hey, I'll go ahead and give you 2 grand cash, or I'll
Mm,
write you, not cash, but I'll write you a check and give you $2,000 you can put in your pocket that, if I close on the deal or don't close on the deal, you still keep, if you'll allow me to go ahead and, market the property to the general public and give me some times for showings. Usually what I do is I try to line it up kind of like open houses from like 1 to 4 on Saturday and Sunday.
hmm.
Um, and the incentive for them is, they get more money. The incentive for me is that I can, even though I don't make as much as if I go ahead and flip it, it's still, the liability is less. The time involved is a lot less, because I'm not getting contractors and, taking a risk on if the market goes down, if it goes up, if I find something in the house, like if I say it's going to be a $30,000 renovation and, the AC goes out while I'm renovating it. Well, now it's a $40,000 renovation.
Yeah, it
So,
blows up. It's 30% of your budget, right?
yeah, so it's a little bit, I would say just, I mean, not that wholesaling's not legit, but it's a little bit more of a legitimate way to essentially, in a way, wholesale the property, but you're, finding the end buyer and selling it to them as is. And then a lot of times, like when I close on a property, I'll go ahead and list it as is, even before, especially like if I've got a few weeks before my contractors can get into it, maybe go in and just clean it up, get all the clutter out. Not really do any work to it. Maybe just fix what, things that are broken that need to be fixed, and then list it kind of as is, in that regard too. And then if I don't get the money that I want for it, then I go ahead and pull it off the market, move forward with the renovation and get it done. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the kind of the way that I handle the contracts when I get them.
Now, you've been doing this for a little bit of time. How are you sourcing the leads? Where are you finding the sellers that are interested in this type of situation?
That's a great question. So, the way I look at it is like, just like a retail business, right? The number one thing you have to do is find clients, right? And so, once you have a client slash contract in hand, then you have all the options to be able to, okay, now how do I go out and get
Right.
the funding for it? How do I go out and find the contractors? But the initial is obviously getting the client. So, um, we do it a few different ways. We use Google Ads. So we pay a company, they charge a management fee, and they run ads for us, cash offer ads for us. And that's probably around 30 to 40% of our deals come from that. Um, the positives of it are that you're getting good quality leads coming in that are ready to sell. Kind of the negatives are some of the people, maybe they bought just a couple of years ago, they're short on equity and they feel like they can actually net more money by selling it, for cash without a realtor fee. But
Avoiding a realtor, right?
that's just not the way the world works. So,
Right.
so we get some of that. The other thing is we're getting, they're pretty expensive depending on your market. You're usually paying like $200 to $400 per lead. And you need to have a sample size of about roughly 2 million to 3 million people to market to. And that's usually going to run you about $6 to $8 grand a month. So it's, the downside is like, it's pretty expensive, but those leads coming in, like in those situations, we usually try to flip those into retail listings for our brokerage business. But then and then the other thing is that, if someone goes and fills out an online form, they're generally going to fill 2 to 4 forms out. So you really got to be quick to get in contact with them, get the appointment set. I mean, it's just like kind of a Zillow lead or whatever. They're sending it to, you got to look at it like they're applying to 3 or 4 different investors, and it could be Open Door. It could be, it could be other companies like, private companies like myself. So I really try to get them on the phone right when the form comes in, go ahead and get the appointment for the same day or the next day. And, ask them a lot of questions, explain our business. We've got like a little packet of like an email that we send out to them with all the properties that we bought and sold, or all the properties we purchased, which now is like over 100. Yeah. So we send out like, making sure, and then we actually send like a warning to them about wholesaling. Because a lot of the companies, the cash offer companies that do the same lead generation I do are not cash investors, they're wholesalers. And so I say, hey, here's the things to look out for. You don't want assignability in your contract. You want to get proof of funds before you go with somebody. You want to get a list of homes that they've purchased in your area in the last year. Certain things like that. Go ahead and get, we usually do $1,000 deposit. It's kind of our standard. A lot of wholesalers won't put up any kind of deposit, or they'll kind of tie it to like a study period for 15, 30 days. So I just try to give them like warnings on what to look out for. And I feel like that helps us too. And so, yeah, so that leads. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. How polished is that? So one of the things that I'm hearing, right, when I hear about maybe a new source or a new leg of my business, is what you've just said is your ad budget was $6,000 or $8,000 a month. So for me, I'm looking at that going, all right, how do I hold that precisely accountable, right? How do I chase those dollars? So it's clear to me that you have a follow-up system and some different processes. How structured is that, and how hard would it be to be recreated by somebody that's listening today?
So we use a company. So the same company that we use our PPC for, we use for our CRM. It's called Billions. It's built on a Salesforce platform. So if anybody wants a connection to him, he'll only, this company, anybody can use the CRM, but they only do they only do 1 ad placement per market. So like if you lived in Winston-Salem, then you couldn't be one of their customers. So that's kind of a nice thing that they do. And then, basically it's we have a spreadsheet where they all come in, and we track like, hey, was this a legitimate lead? Did this person just buy their home last year? Obviously, did we convert them? And at the end of it, how much profit did we make off of that client or that contract or that sale? And then at the end of the year, or pretty much monthly, really, we sit down and look at it. Okay, we spent $8 grand on leads last month, or, really you have to look at it in the rears about every quarter, because of the lag time to get get it under contract, flip it, sell it.
Right.
And so last year we spent roughly all in about 100 grand on those leads, and we profited out around 280. So we're looking to try to bump that to 350 to 360 to really make that one of our top producing lead sources. But so on the back end, so like
that profit, that 350, 380 profit, was that was the gains from the sales of your flips, or that was just dollar for dollar for sales volume? Okay, got it.
Yeah, that was or we looked at it like commission, like, if there was a commission involved, like if we converted it to a retail listing, we add that to the profit and back out, what we spend on photos and et cetera. So that's all in. And then, on the back end, every lead that comes in, they get an automatic text that goes to them when the lead first comes in. They get an automatic email, and then there's kind of a drip campaign built out around that up to, it goes on as far as eternity if they don't unsubscribe from it. And then again, we're calling them right away, getting them on the phone, shooting them a text. Um, so the systems around it would be easy to create because billions will pretty much create them for you. If
Right.
um, but but it is it is a system that needs to be in place if you're going to convert those leads.
So now okay, so that's how we source leads. That's a little bit of how we work them. Obviously, we're a little bit generalized there, but
Well, I'll give you a couple
with
other good ones
yeah.
on lead gen. So, that one's an expensive lead source. One of the cheapest lead sources that we have is like I have a guy that, I pay him $15 an hour plus some bonuses around like getting deals. And he mainly, he'll work on the phones from like 9 to 12. And then in the afternoons, we've got door hangers. I've got some in here. I can put them up here and show. But we got door hangers. He'll go out and, hang on. He'll go look for houses that, looks kind of like driving for dollars. And he'll go, look for houses with, overgrown shrubs or, chip and paint, etc. And he'll go up and knock on the door and, talk to them. If they answer the door, hey, I'm Jared. I'm with Carolina's Home Offer. We've just bought a house around the corner. It's kind of like your circle prospecting, like you would do for a retail listing. We're looking for other projects in the area. We also, as an unlicensed agent, I can offer finder's fees. So it's like, hey, you may not be looking to sell, but if you hear of someone in the neighborhood or a friend or family member that, and we end up doing a deal with them, we'll pay you $1,500 for a finder's fee if we end up, purchasing that home. But yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just, let's see if I can get on the camera there. Yeah, it's just got our website on it, investments, cash offer. And then on the flip side of it, it has a little ditty about our real estate business as well. So we do the driving for dollars thing. That probably equates to another 20% of our deals. We call homeowners like absentee. So we build lists off of PropStream, and we try to put in like different criteria, like if they've owned it for 10 plus years, if they're an out-of-state investor, if they own, multiple properties, like, there's a lot of different ways you can filter those lists down to try to find those most motivated sellers, like pre-foreclosure, tax liens. Another thing I do is I go to the courthouses. Pretty much every courthouse has to publicly display foreclosure listings in some kind of manner. So you can run out there, you can go to your local courthouse, go to the clerk of court, and they really should be on paper. Like ours are just the courthouses. I go to about 4 or 5 different courthouses, and there'll just be like stacks of them. And so you can obviously go to the auction if it's going to be bidded off, but a lot of times it doesn't make it that far. So then what we try to do is we send letters, or we'll go, if it's, we'll either go door knock the door, we'll send letters to them, try to skip trace their number and call them and just kind of say, hey, look, we see that you're in pre-foreclosure. We do a lot of these, we work with a lot of these folks in your kind of situation. And, before your home gets foreclosed on and you lose all your equity, we can either, list it with our retail agent, or, obviously I can give you a cash offer on your home where you guys can close. I'll pay the bank off and you guys can keep your equity in your pocket. So we get a good amount of deals off of that lead source. You can also do the same thing with tax liens. What courthouse would you go to? You would just go to your local county. Every county has a courthouse. So just go to your local county courthouse and go to the clerk of court, and they'll either have them posted on a board, or they'll have them like a paper file of them, or they'll have them like on a TV screen. So, but legally they have to publish those. We also, there's
And
also in every. Oh,
I think PropStream has foreclosure activity, doesn't it?
It does, but I like to go to the courthouse. I mean, it's just kind of like a little bit old school in that, but because there's some lag time between them going from PropStream, from the courthouse to PropStream. So I like to be able to get it because I'm not the only one that does this, right? So it's kind of like that speed to lead thing. Like when it hits the courthouse, I want to go get in contact with them that day, because it's going to take 6 months for someone to go from the foreclosure filing to auction. So, and a lot
Right.
of people with the way the equity's gone up in homes, they got a lot of options other than just being foreclosed on. In
And
every state, there's usually about, oh, go ahead.
with the deals that you're getting, are you finding that they're actually like, is it real world that they're actually being inundated by investors, or is it that you're the only one calling?
Well, I would say this, like absentee owners do get inundated by, because that's all, every wholesale, every investment company, that's where they're going to send their letters to, as absentee, because you're more likely to sell a property,
Right.
if you don't live in it. Um, so, and they get texted and they get phone calls and they get, all those things like inundated pretty well with it. Um, and then you look at like pre-foreclosures are kind of like the expires and FSBOs of the real estate investment world, right? So like they're going to get some activity, but the way I look at it is like, if I can be one of the first ones to get in touch with them, show them that I'm a legitimate company, have a good conversation with them, let them know that their option isn't just a cash offer, because we offer other options, and try to build more credibility around that. Um, I feel like that helps us a lot, kind of stand out from a guy that just, sends out a blast text message to a group of
Right.
pre-foreclosures. So, um, but again, like, I mean, in the retail world, I know, like, I used to work expireds and FSBOs really hard, and they got inundated by agents, but I took a lot of those listings, and I think it just comes through, like, number one, like getting yourself out there and making the calls and knocking on the doors and sending letters and packets, and having more conversations with them. You're not going to get every one, but you're going to get your fair share if you do the work.
So
Um,
talk to me about how the deals that you're not self-funding. I'm thinking about people that want to get into this and are trying to figure
yep,
out how to develop that hard money connection,
yep,
how to develop some of the strategies, and maybe what the hard money lenders are more or less looking for with
yep.
newer investors.
Yeah.
Talk
Let
about that.
me let me wrap up the lead gen. It'll take just a couple
Sure.
of minutes, and then I'll jump full into funding. Um, so in every state, there's only like 10 attorneys that handle foreclosure listings, and they post them on their websites. So you can also, figure out who those attorneys are. If you go to the courthouses, you can start making a list of them, because they're all right there.
Hmm.
And then reaching out to those attorneys, building good relationships with them, take them to lunch, get to know the foreclosure process inside and out. Um, and then, they'll know that you can show them the deals you bought, or, that you're, legitimate, and get them that way. And then also probate attorneys, in your county, you've probably got, depending on how big the county is, you've probably got 5 to 10 main probate and estate attorneys in your town. Um, and so same thing, like building the relationships with them. Other real estate agents are a really good source, so we try to build good relationships with other agents to get them to, bring us stuff that maybe they don't, needs work, or that their seller doesn't want to list. And we make sure we take care of their commission on all
And
those
how
deals.
are you building up those
Uh,
relationships? Are you just calling the attorneys, or how are you
yeah,
developing
just,
that?
yeah,
Giving
the
them wine
attorneys, yeah,
bottles?
yeah, calling the attorneys, you know, asking them about the foreclosure listings that they have, and they'll give you, a lot of them will give you information like, oh, well, this one's going to be continued. It's supposed to go to auction on February 8th, but they're going to continue it till March, and so, calling them, introduce yourself. He'll stop by their office, bring them some donuts, bring them some, coffee, some bagels, stuff like that. And just kind of putting a face to a name. Because they're not getting inundated with people, right? Because that takes work, and that takes relationship building. So um, that's all been really good for us. Kind of the that referral business is really solid, because we're not paying for marketing on all that. And then we send out, or we do send out letters monthly. So we'll take, basically to the same list that you would build for a call list. We might do it a little bit, more finite, because we're spending, it's $1 a mailer, because we send out letters. So that pretty much wraps up our lead gen bubble. Is basically, we have those, 3 to 5 main sources, and we just hammer down on them. Um,
Yeah,
so
so
if
just to
anybody has
recap,
any
that was
questions,
Google
yeah,
Ads, driving for dollars, hitting the courthouse, and then building the connections with the attorneys
and agents, yeah, and
and
other
agents.
real estate agents. you put, I would, if I were in another market, I would pull probably your top 100 listing agents in that market and reach out to them and just say, hey, I'd love to be a resource for you. Even if someone doesn't give you the listing agreement, if you connect me with them, I'm going to pay your 3% or whatever commission you want
Hmm.
to get the deal done. I'll give you my price and you just tack on the commission. I've had people get 5, 6, 7% on deals, agents when they brought them to us. Um, so yeah, perfect. So if anybody else has any questions on lead gen, I think we got about 10, 15 minutes left here, so I can jump into the funding side.
Yeah. Well, and what I love too about how you're doing the deals and when you're coming up with solutions for the client, for yourselves, for the situation, you seem to have all the bases covered in a very simple, like reasonable, logical way, right?
Yeah,
If we
it's
can
not, we're not
invest it, we want to
recreating the
invest it.
wheel
If we can
here.
sell it, we can sell it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we try to kind of coin ourselves as like the one-stop shop for sellers.
Yeah.
Based on what your goals are, we can meet them. Our remodeling company can go in and remodel your house and we can list it. We do that renovate now, pay at closing with that, which helps secure, deals on that end or listings for our retail business. So yeah, we just try to, whatever your goal is, we try to meet you where you're at.
All right. So talk to me about funding.
All right. So there's like, to me, it's just kind of different levels. Like the easiest one is, basically what I did is I built a list of like past clients, people that I knew from, the golf course that I'm a member at, from, friends and family. And I just kind of built this list out and I just started reaching out to them and saying, like early on, I would just say, look, I'm flipping houses. Um, if you've got, X amount of dollars, 250, 300, what have you, I'd love to partner with you on a deal and split the profit with you if you fund it, and I'll handle everything else. I'll find the deal, I'll do the rehab, et cetera. Um, and that, I've got a hand, I ended up having probably 5 to 7 people willing to do that, on deals after about a year. And then I kind of moved to hard money, because you're splitting profit. And so you're not making as much money. So then I moved to hard money lending. Basically, all they're looking at is your credit score in the deal. Um, so, if you have above like a 620 credit score and you've got a deal where you're buying it at like 70% of after renovated value minus what you're going to put in for construction, most of the hard money lenders will loan you like 80 to 90% of that money. Um, so you got to, so in that route, you are having to put your own money into the deal. Um, I also converted a lot of the people I was splitting the profits with to like private lenders because I basically just said, hey, look, I've got a lot of people, I've got other ways to get money to make more money on my deals. So if
Right.
you would flip to, let me pay you 1 point at closing and 12% interest guaranteed for 3 months, um, I'd be willing to keep this ball rolling. So a lot of them kind of converted to that. And the nice thing about that is like, you know, pretty much every property I buy now, I either use my own money for it, or I use private money, and they're loaning me up front. They're loaning me the purchase price and the rehab. So if it's a $300,000 purchase and it's a $70,000 rehab, I'm getting 370 from it at the table, and I'm not using a penny of my own money.
Right. And you're not
Now
having
you
to deal
can't do
with
that with a hard money
distribution
lender.
from the hard money and all
Yeah,
the whole, yeah.
right. And with a hard money lender, they're never going to give you 100%. I mean, they used to back in the day, like a few years ago, but I haven't been able to find one that'll fund 100% for anything reasonable. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's kind of the two ways that I went about finding funding early on is through relationships and through, other hard money lenders. Um, I can give you one of the names is one of the ones I use is Kiavi. It's Kiavi. They got pretty good rates and programs. I think they're in all 50 states. Yeah, so that's the other.
Yeah, and the thing that I was surprised by with hard money is that it's very much a personal business. I always thought it was about I mean, and it is about credit in the deal, but they also have to trust you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and you've got to sort of build that rapport on the phone and in person when you talk to them.
for sure.
through doing that. And that was something that when I first got into hard money, that really actually surprised me. I thought it would be very agnostic and very much like just about
Yeah.
the deal. But
Yeah.
I had a couple guys early on before I like had my thing polished, that it was my presentation polished, that it was they didn't trust me because I didn't sound like I knew what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily
And
realize that on the first one.
well, what I've found too is like, now that I'm, years into it and doing a lot of deals, I have these guys, like if I haven't used somebody in a few months, they'll come back to me and be like, "Hey, what can I do to be your lender? What do I need to change? Or,
Right.
what kind of rates are you looking for? What kind of points are you looking for? How can we adjust it so I can get back in the door?" So that's been,
And that's
helpful.
actually a good point. I think there's a perception that like the hard money guy is going to come break your kneecaps and they don't really want to lend the money. That's not it at
Right.
all. They in fact they very much want to lend the money and they want to,
Yeah.
make a deal that works for everybody.
Yeah.
So what software do you use any software to analyze the deal?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ones. I use or actually analyze like what I'm like if it's a deal or not. I use
For example.
PropStream is what I use to kind of find the data on sellers, or like build out a marketing list. But as far as analyzing the deal, it's for me it's pretty straightforward. Like just like if I were going to list the home, I go and find comps and I see what the ARV is going to look like, the after renovated value. I try to be pretty conservative on that, right? Like if I'm not trying to shoot for the moon. I'm like, okay, well, what would this house definitely sell for after I put in the renovations? And then I look at my renovation cost, and then I back out. I probably add to that generally about 10 to 15 grand just for surprises. So then I build that remodeling budget. And then I look at what are my closing costs going to be? What are my carrying costs going to be with if it's being financed, or does the property have an HOA? Et cetera. And I do it. I don't generally do like just the hey straight 70% of ARV.
Yeah.
Da da da. I look at the deal and I'm like, hey, if I've got to do a 6 month renovation and put 100 grand in it of renovations, then what kind of return do I want to look at? Like is it worth it for me to make 25 grand on that deal, 50 grand, 75 grand? So I kind of fluctuate. Now, if it's like a quick and easy one where I'm just going in there and painting and replacing the floors, and I can get it done in 3-4 weeks and then turn around and list it, I might go up to like a 30K profit on that deal, or go down to a 30K profit on that deal,
Right.
if it's an easier deal. So I look to try to make at least 25 grand minimum profit. And 40 to 50 is kind of like the target, trying to get, an average of about 40 to 50 a deal. But yeah, that's mainly just how I analyze them, is just kind of it's not a very scientific way. I mean, I just try to make sure I can make money, like, um,
Absolutely. So just real quickly, in the interest of time, we are at our 30-minute limit, but I am happy to run long, Brad, if you've got the time.
yeah, I got plenty of time.
All right.
I've got till 2 o'clock. So, I mean, I don't want to go that late, but another 15 minutes or so, yeah, I'm good with that.
Sounds good. All right. Sounds good. We can do that. So let's go back and ask through some of these questions. Do you use software? We talked about that. Stacy asked, can you share more about how you structure your private money? Are you paying the 1% to them at the purchase or when you sell? And are you paying interest only to them at the 12%?
Yes. So I try to move the points to the back end, if I can. Sometimes they're like, no, I want it up front. Okay, fair enough. Um, and then yes, it's interest only 12 months and it's deferred interest. So what I don't want to do is have 6 projects going on and paying, 15 grand a month in interest payments um, to lenders. So I always do deferred interest on those payments, until the property sells.
All right, awesome. And then Raina asked, average fees and rates for hard money lenders.
Depending on your experience level, you're looking at probably 10 to 14% interest, and 0 to 2 points, I would say, is probably your average.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my first deal, was 14 at 2 points.
Yeah,
Because we just
14 and
didn't know
2. Like
anything.
if it's your
Right.
first deal, you're probably paying 14 and 2. And if it's any
Right.
less than that, then just be grateful. So,
Yeah, exactly.
um,
Can you get pre-approved with hard money lenders before you make an offer? What is required for such an approval?
so this is a good question because on my first deal, the hard money lender was like, well, bring me a contract and I'll get you approved. And I was like, well, I don't want to put it under
Mm.
contract if I can't get approved.
Right.
So I just wrote a contract and sent it to him and got approved on that house that, you know, that
May or
it
may
wasn't
not
really
have,
mine.
may or
So
allegedly existed,
yeah, may
right?
or may not have been mine. I was just like, because I want to make sure I got approved. But the process is pretty simple. I mean, they'll pull your credit, they'll send you an experience sheet, so you'll put down whatever experience you have, um,
Yep.
and then they'll want to analyze the deal to make sure that it matches up on the numbers for what they're offering.
Mhm.
And I mean, some of the lenders you can just hit them up and just say, hey, I think this deal is going to appraise out at, because like the institutional hard money lenders, like a Kiavi, they will send a physical person to the property to, quote unquote, appraise it for the ARV
Mhm.
and to make sure that your numbers are where they need to be for what the ARV is, what your construction budget is. Um, and so you want to send them the numbers like, hey, this is what I think this is going to peg out at. And then they can tell you like, okay, well, or you can figure it out. Like they'll basically loan you 70% of the ARV and the construction money, but they do the construction money in installments.
Mhm.
And then they'll loan you up to 90% of that total or
And
80% or whatever their lending limit is on the total.
did they come out and audit your construction progress periodically?
Um, like until you move up, because they'll give you like you're a level 1, you're a level 2, like until you move up to like level 2 or 3, they'll, if you ask for, hey, I'm done with the kitchen and the baths, I need the 15 grand for that in the reno budget. Um, then in the beginning, yeah, they'll either make you submit pictures or send somebody out to kind of verify the construction progress.
Yep.
Um, so I always tried to, when I gave them my renovation outlay, I would always make the things that I did first, I would put more weight on those numbers. So if I wanted to get, so like, let's say the painting was actually going to be 5, I would put 15 for painting. If the floors, sand and the floors were 5, I'd put 15 for floors, and I'd go ahead and do the floor. I'd go ahead and do that first, and then request that 30K, so there's kind of ways that you can move it around a little bit to be able to kind of work in your favor. So
Yeah, and explain why it's important to move that forward. It's because of the timing, right?
yeah, the timing of it. So like, if you under budget for your paint, or let's say, yeah, if you under budget for it and you're trying to get that, because they'll release it in like installments, right? As you complete your progress, and they basically do it in the rear. So you got to have the work done and then they'll reimburse you for it. And so you want to get, obviously, you want to draw that as much money as you can out so that you can use their money to fund the project and not as much of your money. So,
Right.
it's kind of the way I kind of scheduled it whenever I was doing that.
And then Christy asked, do you physically see every property or do you blindly buy based on the numbers?
It depends. So, I mean, we make sight unseen offers, but they're just not as good as if we just give ourselves more room. And then we have a 7-day inspection period. So we do the inspection and verify that we were right or wrong, so,
And have you ever walked away
I
from a
prefer to see.
7 day?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I close on probably like 90% of what I put under contract, probably more than that, probably more like 95%. But yeah, I mean, if we get an inspection and because we inspect every property before we buy it. And, that's another tool in negotiation too. It's like, this is your cash offer. We're going to do an inspection. And then you get something back that's unforeseen, that like maybe there's a foundation issue, or, you know, any multitude of issues that you normally find in an inspection, and then using that to go back and renegotiate your price. And if there's nothing wrong with it, because there's houses where like I'll put it, we'll go under contract and I know that the HVAC is out, so I'm not going to try to renegotiate the HVAC after I go under contract,
Right.
but like if it breaks during the contract, then that's something that, hey, these numbers are going to adjust. So, so yeah, we definitely do an inspection. As far as I've only bought a couple of houses that I didn't see before I closed on them, but they were just the numbers made so much sense that it made sense to go ahead and purchase the home. But that's a very rare case. I know guys that do that. I don't particularly like to do that, but I at least want to go drive by it and make sure that it's not burnt down.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Now, with that, that leads me to
So,
what I feel like is the first question is what's the situation for the seller that the numbers can be that good and they're still happy?
I mean, it's a lot of different. I mean, honestly, a lot of the people that I buy from are either like it's not really, and maybe there is another circumstance that I don't know about, but for what the information that they give me is things like, I just don't want to deal with showings. I don't want to deal with the hassle of listing my
Mhm.
house. A lot of them are like, embarrassed, like they haven't updated their home. They got a lot of stuff in it and they're friends with all their neighbors and their neighbors have never seen their house and they don't want pictures and open houses and stuff online about their house. So there's some of
Mm.
that. Other like divorce is another one that I get quite a bit, estate, probate, foreclosure, there's other, motivating factors for people. Um, and it just kind of depends on kind of where they're at and what they're looking at doing, and as to what's going to, you know, kind of bring them to selling the house at a essentially a discounted value.
Has there ever been a time, this is just me, just 'cause I'm curious. Has there ever been a time where you've closed on a property and then not been able to flip it or lost money?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Can you tell me
I can
about
think
that?
of
What happened?
three. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can think of three offhand. One of them I'm dealing with right now. Asheville's about a 3 hour from me market. Um, I bought a house. I mean, the comps it was a townhouse. Comps in the neighborhood were comping out at like 420. Um, I paid 325 for the house. It was a simple renovation, like granite countertops, backsplash, flooring, paint, and then relisted it at like 399.9. I got an offer at like 375, and I didn't take it. And then
Mm.
Hurricane Helene hit, and then so I pulled it off the market. But I'm paying a $400 a month townhome fee until I'm going to list it again in April, and hopefully, I think my nut on it right now is like 360. So I'd really just need to sell that house for 380, 390, and get out from under it. But if I can, I can't. So um, I would say the deals that I messed up on the most were out of my market. Like I
Mm.
had a similar situation in Fayetteville where I bought a house and which is another market like 2 hours east of me. And I think I scraped out of that house making $800 total after, you know what I mean? So I didn't quite lose money, but I lost my time, my contractor resource. It does, even if you get out of it and make a dollar or only lose a couple $1,000, think about the time that you lose, everything else that goes into that. Um,
Now, and I think that is interesting segue to these last two questions that we have or comments about basically the contractors. How did you find contractors? How did you dial in that list? How do you make sure that they're investor friendly?
Yep, I had so one of the contractors that I use, I've been using. He renovated the very first house that I flipped, and he's renovated probably 50% of them since then. He basically just works projects for me exclusively at this point. And I think him knowing that, like, hey, I've got a steady flow of work coming my way, um, helps. And then and that he was recommended to me by a home inspector, a friend of mine, home inspector. When I actually, he was inspecting the house that I was flipping, and I didn't really have like great contractor contacts, and he hooked me up with this guy. And um, typically, what I do is I get them to quote the labor, and then I buy the materials.
Mm.
So that way, the contractor can't like jack the material cost up on you. Um, and I've gotten pretty good at like what a fair price is on renovating a house, right? And so, if I say, hey, here's what I want to do to a house, and they say, oh, it's going to be 35 grand labor, I'm like, I think it's more of a 25 grand labor house. Like, meet in the middle or something. Like, I understand you got to make money, but I do tell them like, I'm not going to negotiate with you every time because I want
Right.
you to get paid so that you because at the end of a project, if something isn't done right, I don't want you to go, well, I told you it was going to be 35 and you only paid me 25 or whatever. So, I've got three like main contractors that I use, and I just kind of rotate them around kind of to, like, one of the guys is like, I would say he has the best tile subs. He has his craftsmanship's the best, but he's the most expensive. And so I use him on like the higher end stuff. I got kind of my middle range guy, which is the guy that does, and he's gotten a lot, like him and his crews over the last few years have just gotten a lot better at what they're doing because they've been doing so many, and they've been, I've been giving them feedback after every project, and I make them fix things if it's not right. And so, and then I have kind of like a guy that I use that's like 35, $40 an hour, and he basically can just paint, So if I've got a house that just needs to be painted, I'll holler at him and he'll go in there and paint it. And then I've got a carpet guy, I've got a granite guy, I've got a tile guy, so a lot of it is kind of subbing things out myself, but over time it's like building that list.
And how did you structure that, like that first deal with, and you pick like whichever one that you are, maybe talk to me about like maybe a contractor that you work with now that maybe you weren't super comfortable with on the first deal. How did you structure that? How did you did you babysit them? Did you need to? What did that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I was over at the house about every day. I mean, now I've got a project manager that's her job is just riding around and checking to make sure they're working and they're making progress. And she does all the ordering for and we have a very set, like, like we're in the Lowe's, like the top, like Lowe's, whatever they want to call it for contractors. And like they drop ship everything to the house for us. We can actually order out of the main warehouse in Raleigh that like the public doesn't have access to. So like that's where they house like all the, all their big stuff like vanities and, all the bulk, the big items that they don't keep in that are hard to keep in stock at their stores. But we basically use the same vanities. We use the same kitchen cabinet company.
Yeah.
I do the same granite or quartz. I do granite if it's under 250, and I do quartz if it's above that. Sometimes I do butcher block if it's a little bit cheaper house. We have a palette that pretty much stays pretty standard as far as when we flip a home. Like if I showed you the last 15 homes that I flipped, you'll be like, damn, these all look the same. Like we use the same paint colors, we use the same light fixtures, and we buy a lot of stuff in bulk and store it.
Yeah.
Like if we can find a really good deal on like hardware, the things that we use a lot, like light fixtures, like the flush mount circle light fixtures, certain, like they had a deal on vanities. These vanities are normally like $300, 48 inch. And they had them on sale for like 125. So I bought like 15 of them, cause I know I'm going to use 48-inch vanities.
And what I love and what keeps coming throughout this whole interview is that yes, you definitely have like an MO or like a process that you generally follow, but you leave a lot of flexibility. And I think this is a lot of new investors will kind of look for the structure and like what do I do and give me the step and the next step and the next step and the next step. And you very quickly realize that's not really a path to success at scale. You have to have a certain amount of flow and kind of that outer bumper. Think of it like a pinball machine, right? You got to stay in the pinball machine, but you got to be able to bounce from one side to the other within some limits to make sure that the deal works for the person you're dealing with, works for the contractor, works for you, and then still works for the eventual buyer.
Yeah. I think Reno was asking how many flips we work on at any point in time. So the most projects I'll give to one contractor at a time is 2. So I have the capacity for about 6 at a time. And then I also do retail renovations too. If like we do kitchens and baths and, flooring and paint and, all that good stuff. And our remodeling company really won't take a job unless it's at least 40 grand in work. Like we're not like handyman. We're not going to go and just, fix a light bulb or do a light fixture or whatever. It's like if someone really wants to renovate their property, update a kitchen or, a bath or, hardwoods or flooring, paint, like they kind of need to do, at least 20, 25 grand in work just because, it's not worth it doing, jobs because it takes about the same amount of time to do a $15,000 job as it does a $40,000 job. Once you
Right.
get in there and start covering everything and supplies and whatever else. So
All right. So Al St. Pierre asked, how do you navigate the subs and give them access to the house? So I gotta think this was probably a bigger concern for you, like on the first handful of deals until you develop
yeah,
trust with the contractors. But how did you navigate that?
yeah,
Or did you?
yeah. I mean, it's worked out. I mean, I have tried to add contractors in the past that didn't do a good job, and so I just don't use them again. Um, but yeah, I mean, we put a lockbox on the house. We go through a scope of work with them. I have them sign a contract on a completion date, and then they have to. There's a penalty for them if they don't complete it by that date. Um, the way that I pay them is like it depends on the trust I have with them. But like if I was using somebody for the first time, let's say it's like a $40,000 renovation, I would probably break that down into like $5,000 increments. I'm not going to pay them 20 grand up front to start working. Um, that way, so,
Great. Yeah, so Young's telling us we got to wrap it up. She did tell me to keep
yeah,
it
we
to
got to
30. We're running a little long here. Um, so, as, are there any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to share? Anything that you think would be useful to our viewers that you haven't already shared with us?
Yeah, so I just threw out that's my Instagram handle is flipping_Brad. Would love to connect with you guys on social media. You can follow my projects and the videos that I do because I mean I do a good amount of social media marketing. Um, I have we do I don't really call it coaching, I call it consulting. I've got I basically have like my business in a box that has all the videos and things like that. So if anyone's interested in doing that, I charge $9.95 for kind of that business in a box. And then I usually do like either like group consulting, like 3 to 5 people at a time. And I offer one-on-one consulting too, if you need help, like kind of navigating the process. Um, so if you want to connect with me on that, just, fire me a message on Instagram. Be happy to chat and help.
Awesome. That's flipping_Brad on Insta.
That's it.
Got
Yep.
it. Got it. Got it. Cool. You got that in there. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Brad, for being here. This webinar is recorded. It will be in it'll be, how are we distributing that? That'll be on their YouTube page. It's also going to be posted in the Facebook group, so you'll see it there.
Okay,
Thank you
cool.
for being here. I really appreciate it. And I think we covered a lot of ground here. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, James. Appreciate everyone's time. Cheers. Good luck.